Hey everyone, this is Karen Roberts, and we're here to talk about how to use sources effectively. So let's get started. The fun thing about research is when you find out one answer, it always opens up 3 or 4 other questions. Have you found that to be true? Is it fun yet? I think by the end of this course, I hope that you will find that research is fun because it just opens up question after question, and you are going to discover so many interesting ways to think. So let's get started. Oh, but are you having source anxiety? Oh my goodness. Let's just take a moment and look at the big picture. What is the big picture? Well, we can use 6 rules of thumb. You've chosen your topic for your presentation or for your analysis, and you have that big picture, the situation or the challenge that you're facing, and you want to delve deeper into it. First things first. This is going to take time. It's going to take effort. So choose a topic that you can use in your workplace tomorrow, okay? Or the next week. Choose something that will really make a difference in your work life, in your professional life. Okay, so you have the big picture and you're ready to delve into finding sources. So you've visited the Armacost library and you've entered your term. Oh my goodness, but there are over 1 million sources, 1 million sources for this one term. So what do? You reduce your scope. How do you narrow the field? Well, what if you started looking at your sources with the 6 rules of thumb found on page 100 in your writing analytically textbook? So you reduce the scope. For example, you've chosen the topic teams, and you're using the Couteau and Hackman article as your starter, Why Teams Don't Work. I entered the word teams into the Armacost online library, and I got 13,542,199 sources. Talk about source anxiety. What do I do now? Well, I narrow the field. I reduce the scope. What about the teams do I want to explore? You'll refine your results by adding additional terms to your search and using the refining tools on the left-hand side of the page. And we'll go over this in class, and I'll give you a demonstration. Okay, so you're going to eliminate sources that don't relate to the situation you're addressing. You're also going to use that left-hand side to refine and hone the years that come up, because you don't want, unless you're studying old literature, you don't want 1943 information unless you're providing a history, a historical perspective. Okay, so you want to study the wording. You want to study the wording and get just the right words. What is it that you want to learn about teams? What kind of teams? I've seen teams work. What's behind the statement, why teams don't work? You've seen teams work, but maybe you don't like to be on a team. Maybe that's your question. Why am I not enjoying teamwork? So you dig deeper into your thinking. And so you suspect your first responses. You ask questions of your first responses on your team as you dig deeper. And then you begin with questions. Why? So what? What if? You don't begin with answers. For example, if you're already convinced that you don't work best in teams, then you've limited your thinking. Instead, you might ask why you don't like to work in teams and what might make you enjoy working in teams. I know we've all worked in teams that just didn't click, but I hope you have worked in teams that did click. And then expect to become interested. Approach your research with the expectation that you are going to be interested, you're going to learn something, and you're going to be in a discovery process. As you're looking at all the sources, one source might intrigue you. You could mind map what this source is saying, then go to the references at the end of the article. Always look at the references at the end of the article. Sometimes I look at those first before I read the article. And you may just discover an aha moment. Wouldn't that be spectacular? And that might help you develop your working thesis. Now, notice that I say working thesis. It's not that you're going to have your final thesis after you've done the research or before you do the research. No, then that would be an argument. But this working thesis will help you on the discovery path. And then you can go back and revise your thesis. And then, of course, write. So you free write, you keep a journal about it, you mind map, and you write, and you don't revise until the very end. Okay? You want new ideas, you want concrete ideas, and you want to have a conversation with the sources. You're going to be hearing that a lot, having a conversation with the sources. And then your working thesis. Okay. This is the beginning. Developing a working thesis is just the beginning. You want your journey to take you on a path of discovery. That means that your thesis will change and you learn more. Okay, so conversations with yourself and with the sources. It's all about interacting with your sources. It's about talking to your sources. I wonder what this mama is saying to her little girl. They're both intently communicating with each other, aren't they? They're in Italy at one of the visitor sites. You see a visitor sitting on one of the pillars. I wonder what they're discussing. A major problem in using sources is that the writer quotes a source and leaves the quote to explain itself. After all, the source is an expert. You're not an expert. But remember that everyone has different fields of experiences, different backgrounds, different ideas, and different definitions for words. You might even go so far as to say that the source understands the quotation differently than you do. So don't let the source have the end or the final word. Speak to that source. Reject the idea that the source has the final word. Reject that the source is comprehensive and provides all that anyone ever needs to know. Why were there so many sources if this source could provide all that there is to know about the subject? So reject that this source is the final word. And then clarify, explain to the reader the meaning of the quotation, the paraphrase or the summary, and explain it to yourself first, and ask questions of it and add your thoughts. A good conversation has moments when readers agree with each other and they disagree with each other, and then they collaborate with each other and they come up with new discoveries. Isn't that what your writing is all about? Isn't that what your collaboration is about, your analysis? You want to learn something new. You want to develop a new strategy, a new way of doing things that is more efficient, perhaps, more cost-effective, or more collaborative. This is how you get your sources to talking with each other. You develop a chain of thinking. This is how you interact with your sources. It's something like this. Cassandra builds on what James says. Eva builds upon Randolph's idea. And together, they develop new approaches to the topic. So there are different methods that we can do to approach this. So you might choose one sentence from a secondary source, and one from a primary source. And you could free write about it by having the sources speak to each other, having them agree and disagree and collaborate. And then what do? Then you enter the conversation. You could do 10-on-1, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You could do pan, track, and zoom. These are in your writing analytically textbook. You could notice and focus. You could use the method. You can do application, uncover assumptions, agree and disagree, and examine contradictions. All of this we are going to go over, and it's in your writing analytically book as well. So let's get started. 10-on-1. What do you observe on this 10-on-1? This is a peaceful park in Houston. In chapter 6 of Writing Analytically, we study 10-on-1. 10-on-1 is the inductive method. So you're observing everything around, and then you're gathering information, you're interpreting what is the meaning, and then you're applying, okay? And so the writer looks at different pieces of the information that are united in some way. Rather than looking at the whole, you're looking in depth at the parts that represent the whole. So you see, they're in a lake, in a park. We don't see the park. I'm wanting you to pay attention to these turtles here. Oh, look, see, all these turtles are going one way, but then we have a renegade and he's going the opposite way. So what could we say? Here are turtles on a log. They're moving in the same direction, most of them, except for one. There's some big ones, some tiny ones, and they're in a straight line because they're on the log. Okay. Most of them have come up out of the water, and one with his head up is going against the other turtles. I want to explore the different one. So my claim might be, turtles like to go in the same direction, but strong-willed turtles may decide to challenge the direction others are going. There's competition even in the peace of a park. It was a quiet park. It was a beautiful park. It had flowers all over, trees. It was shady. It was a wonderful, peaceful park. But then when I zeroed in on these turtles, I saw, oh, it's not so peaceful for the turtles. So I'm going from particulars about these turtles, and I'm looking for discrepancies in the peace in the park. And I'm seeing all is not what it seems to be. So on page 164 of Writing Analytically, you start with a pre-existing claim, or you generate a claim by using the method or notice and focus, and we'll talk about that in a minute, to find a revealing pattern of tendency in the evidence. But then, I see this difference, unexpected difference, and I'm intrigued. So you move through the evidence and you look for information that corroborates your claim, looking for information that corroborates your claim or disagrees with your claim. So you're going to also look for those things that disagree with you. And you're going to examine your assumptions, your reasons for why you have chosen this piece of information and why it's important to the overarching claim. And then you're going to connect the data. And then you'll revise and enrich the implications of your claim on the basis of your examples. That's 10 on 1, inductive reasoning. So the method or notice and focus, you walk through the evidence and you ask about your reasons. Why are you examining this renegade turtle? And you're connecting all the evidence. All the evidence shows us that turtles like to go together, but then maybe the bigger turtles are more competitive. And then you revise and you enrich. Now there's a method. And the method says, okay, I'm looking for repetition of words and details. Repetition of words, phrases, and details. Is there a pattern? I'm looking for similar details or words, strands. And then I'm looking for binary oppositions, organizing contrasts. And then I'm choosing one repetition, strand, or binary. Don't choose 2 or 3, 1. Be very in-depth. And then locate anomalies, exceptions to the patterns. There's always exceptions. Look for those. Okay, then there's pan. So you're going to give the reader the big picture. We see everything from a distance to set the context. So the big picture. And then you're going to track. The camera follows some sequence of action. Here, the photographer might pick up a particular stream of light on the road and follow it with the camera. but later focus on the light in the sky. See the light in the sky in his lens there? And then he's going to zoom in. You notice he's zooming in at the vanishing point of the road. It looks like he's going to focus on that vanishing point. This is what a writer or presenter is doing in an analysis. And notice in focus, we're going to observe, we're going to see, what do we notice? So repeatedly ask the question, what do you notice? What do I notice? Cite actual details of your observation. This part of the exercise should produce an extended and unordered list of details. They will call attention to themselves. Let's try it. Okay, so I see 3 girls here sitting in Roma, and this gal is perhaps texting or reading a text on her phone. Notice she's got sneakers on. This girl has sneakers on. Oh, this girl is looking at this girl's phone. And they all have their purses here. And this one's, look at her feet. They're turned in, and she's resting her hands on her knees. But this girl's different, isn't she? Unexpected. Look at her. She's got a colorful bag, orange, and it matches her shirt, orange. And she has on sandals. The other girls have on sneakers. And her shoulders are bare. So she must have a covering for her shoulders. This was earlier, several years ago. And at that time, if they were going to go into churches, women needed to have their shoulders covered. So she's either got a covering that she's going to put over her shoulders, or she's not going into churches. All right. So what else about her? She's holding something, looks like maybe a phone, but she's not paying attention to it. She's not paying attention to this girl's phone like this girl is. She's looking this way. Oh, what do we see here? There's a reflection. There aren't 3 girls, there are 4 girls. You see the reflection? And this girl's standing up. Looks like she's on her phone too. Wonder what type of connection there is between this girl, and what disconnection or connection there is with this girl and these 2 girls. They look like friends, don't they? Yeah. So what are they thinking? Now you rank the details, all those details that we noticed, and you create an order of importance. You answer the question, what 3 details, specific features of the subject are most interesting? Are they tired tourists? Do all the sights in Rome overwhelm tourists? Perhaps. There's so many you can see. You don't have time to see them all in one day. Tourists who perhaps don't know the history of the site, so they're not interested. They're more interested in their phone. They do seem interested, don't they? And they're not smiling either. Are they having fun? Maybe they're tired. And then you ask why. Say 3 things you selected that struck you as the most interesting. And then you start noticing as much as you can about those 3 details, and you dwell with the data. You record what you see, you suspend judgment, and you describe longer than usual. So, why is this girl different? I'm not sure, but I would like to have a conversation with her and find out. Let's notice and focus. And then apply. On page 63 of Writing Analytically, it talks about applying. So you use a sentence in one source and you apply it to another situation. Undoubtedly, because the context is different between the sources or situation, you'll have to refocus your lens. Robotics is used here with this car, in car manufacturing. Robotics was not even known when Henry Ford invented the automobile, was it? But he developed the assembly line. The food industry and healthcare are also using robotics, as well as logistics and just about any other industry right now. Even in your home, you have robotics. So, how might my workplace employ robotics? So, I know that there's robotics in manufacturing of cars. What can I learn from how they use robotics here that would help me understand how we can use robotics in our workplace? What do I learn that will benefit my workplace? And how do I apply what I learned? And then we have to uncover our assumptions. Oh my, we do have assumptions. We approach subjects with assumptions, don't we? And many times we don't recognize that we are. So we have to paraphrase, ask ourselves, what are our assumptions? And paraphrase. Focus on the structure of our thinking and determine the key terms in the statement and paraphrase them. Ask, given my overt claim, what must my writing already believe? What is it I already believe? And then ask, what are those assumptions? What's the statements resting on? What are the implicit ideas underlining the source and my own writing that I'm assuming, the source is assuming is true? And what am I assuming is true? And then I need to consider how these underlying assumptions contribute to my understanding and the source's understanding of the reading as a whole. It's asking the right questions. Questions. Analysis is all about asking questions, and we need to ask the right questions. So, what are the issues and conclusions of the source? What are the reasons that this source came to those conclusions? Are there any ambiguous words or phrases that I need to explore? And what's the value and descriptive assumption? What is the value of the assumption? And describe the assumptions. And are there any fallacies in the reasoning? Is there good evidence? Is the evidence credible? Are there rival causes that I need to investigate? Oh, we can prove anything with statistics. Did you know that? How we skew the statistics, how we word the statistics can be very deceptive. Examine the data carefully. Is there significant information that's missing? We can't cover everything, can we? We can't be comprehensive. Remember the millions of sources I found on the word teams. So we do have to omit information. The sources have to omit information. What is that information that is omitted? We need to be aware of it. And then, are there other possible reasonable conclusions? Yes, perhaps. We need to explore those, don't we? So this team in Italy is using data, lots of data. You see the data all over the place. And they're working as a team. They're collaborating, they're having discussions, they're agreeing, they're disagreeing. And they're in Italy and they're designing modern furniture to go into houses and apartments all over the world. It was an amazing experience. But they used their sources, their data, all of their drawings, all of their expertise, all of what matters to the customer, and they're developing and innovating, agreeing, disagreeing, collaborating. Isn't that what teams are all about? That's what analysis is all about too. You take care.